Quotations from myself, segment 85, quotation number 1011. To analyze a literary text into its elements and modes in hope to uncover the mystery of writing craft is like putting separate pieces of the dismembered flower under the microscope to learn about its underlying cellular composition. In both cases, one can only penetrate the deep structure of the subject of inquiry. But the fragrance and colorfulness, the aesthetic impression and the enchantments are gone. Number 1012. The more I live, the more I tend to agree with this famous pronouncement by Leo Tolstoy that all happy families are alike. Moreover, what I find is common to all successful marriages, which nowadays means people staying together long enough for their children to grow up, is a diametrical opposition of a character roles each partner is willing and able to play. Thus, for a marriage to survive, one of the spouses has to act a part of a romantic, impractical dreamer, while the other that of pragmatic realist. For without the first quality, the relationship gets stale and boring, and without the second, they are practically unsustainable. But since nobody can possess such a contradictory characteristic traits as realist and romantic, dreamer and pragmatist simultaneously, the division of labor in a marriage, if it is to last, is of paramount importance. It is preferable, of course, that a couple enters into relations already assuming their respectively opposite modes of behavior, which they think suit them the best. But often the division of character develops in the process of marriage, where it is never static but continuously evolving, until after some period of trying on different roles, the partners finally settle into the ones acceptable to both sides. Those who can stick to this once established arrangement should be considered the luckiest. But sometimes people who were happy with their original role eventually get dissatisfied or simply bored and want to switch. Now, if the other partner feels the same, everything is more or less all right. Well, then they both can at least try the switching, and even if unsuccessful, the mutual satisfaction of being able to express one's longing for a change, and of being wholeheartedly supported in such a very personal quest by the other human being, an extremely rare luxury indeed, will make a strong union even stronger. But if the other spouse, happy and content playing his or her character, has grown accustomed to it through the long years of practice, and has no intention to try another, but on the contrary resist and fight the change, with all means available, and there are too many both fair and unfair ones, the trouble, the family strife, and endless struggle ensue, and in today's climate of unwillingness to compromise, it often ends in the breakup of a marriage, which seemed so sound even a short time ago. 1013. One who was born as a Jew, but grew up wishing to be and trying to become a Gentile, has a perfect right to feel and act this way, for the individual's self-determination must be as sacred as a collective one. But what such a person has no right to do is to turn into super anti-Semite to justify the excuse his conversion. And the same commandment applies to self-hating Catholic, self-hating Muslim, or self-hating anyone who by virtue of birth belonged to the less respectable ethnic, religious, or social group than he would have given a choice wish to. You are free to live, but not to blame, for the decision is yours, and so are the reason for it. And if one had the misfortune to be born into a persecuted group, he should not vent his frustration and anger on his fellow victims, but direct it toward the real culprit, the victimizer. 10:14. Had Hamlet lived today, the most pressing question in his mind would have probably been the mundane to wear or to wear condom, instead of the profound to be or not to be. Yet come to think of it nowadays, it can easily amount to the same thing. 10:15. Several years ago I have written the following verse. Who says small children or big fools are only ones to tell the truth? Nor child, neither fool am I, yet it's so hard for me to lie. It is clear to me now, looking back, that at that time it was simply a realization and acknowledgement of the bitter-sweet fact, a mixture of self-admiration and self-pity. But lately I've been thinking more and more about the reason people like me act in such a particular manner. Let's first assume that one's behavior is a product of the nurture, to use the modern psychological dichotomy of nature and nurture as two main causes in creation of human personality. Then our common daily experience tells us, more often than not, that lying in certain circumstances would save us a lot of grief. And yet, there are undeniably some people who could not lie to save their lives. On the other hand, some professions demand of their practitioners to always give the true and unambiguous answer, as for example in my case. I was trained as a structural engineer to operate in this way. Yet during my career I have come across more than a few engineers who were very skillful in act of deception, not only in personal, but even in their professional lives. Thus, having observed in the course of my life the numerous instances when neither life experience nor professional training were strong enough to make one either a liar or a truthful man, I have come to a conclusion that it is not the nurture that should be blamed or given credit for either outcome. But if it's not the nurture, then that is responsible for who we are. Is it the nature? It is the nature, isn't it? Okay, let's do it again. But if it isn't the nurture that is responsible for who we are, it is the nature, isn't it? But what is the nature? Is there such a thing as a truth gene? Hardly, for the honest parents often produce deceitful children, and it is not uncommon for a truthful child to be ashamed of the parents who constantly lie. Or perhaps there are some specific and separate center for truth and lie in our brain, and the difference between a liar and a truthful person is caused by relative predominance of one over the others. As tempting as such explanation may sound, I am personally not aware of any scientific proof over them. And if neither social nor medical sciences provide the satisfactory answers. What is left as always is metaphysics and religion, and to account for the obvious differences of human behavior, one has to resort to the notion of soul, God, and grace, and to assume that it is by the grace of God that one man is endowed with soul of truthfulness and another with soul of a liar, and each has to make do with what has been given to him. And to the same cause, and with equal justification, can be attributed the other differences in man's character, like bravery and cowardice, generosity and stinginess, kindness and cruelty, etc., etc. For the same parents as the same condition can produce both kinds with equal probability. And so, here, if not by the grace of God, goes I. 10:16. The easiest way to get along with almost everybody is to never ask anyone for anything. For everybody loves to be known as being kind and generous, especially when to obtain such a lofty and enviable reputation, one does not have to leave even a finger, or spend even a penny in order to justify it. 10:18. Though most of us don't have even the first, all desperately want to believe in having a second chance, and then the third, the fourth, etc., etc., almost till the day they die. 10:19. When the first Spanish female toreador was asked what motivates her to enter the arena, which hitherto has been solely the man preserve, her reply was, bull, danger, death. Now, come to think of it, some women get it by simply marrying the right guy. 10:20. When I hear nowadays of famous actors, singers, painters, writers complaining with increasing frequency about being cheated out of the huge part of their earnings by their business manager, lawyers, agents, dealers, I want to ask such people a simple question. Have you done it for the money? And if the answer is categorically and unequivocal yes, then you should have been your own accountant and, as a consequence, also accept the inevitable loss to your art. For the more attention and energy you must have devoted to financial consideration, the less is left for artistic creativity. You cannot serve both art and money. But let me suggest to you that your real motivation was never money, but the recognition, fame, glory, and joy and ecstasy of creation. And if you get it, I assure you, you have already been paid in full, and nobody can take it from you. So do not blame the money changer for what they are, but pity them. For they shall spend the rest of eternity in the obscurity or infamy they richly deserve. But your name will be imprinted in the people's memory for a long time to come.